Hi, and welcome to the Thriving Entrepreneurs 15 Minutes and Not a Minute More. She is Rachelle Learling, entrepreneur coach.
He is David Foster, founder coach.
And today we have a question from the great and all powerful Jack Bradley. How important is a mission statement to an entrepreneur? Or my version of the question is, what do pull-ups have to do with political stability? But we'll get to that later. And we
Gotta
want
explain that one.
we want to ask people who are listening and watching, do you have a mission statement that you use? How do you use it? Rachelle, start us off.
So last time we talked about a vision, and I think for many it is confusing to see the difference between those two, mission and vision. But as you said also in the description of this promotion of the event, we're going backwards because in the end, the mission is what it all comes down to. Why are we doing what we're doing? What's the objective here? Where are we going? And if as long as that's not clear, then it's almost like an empty shell that we're working for. And without going too fast, I think that leads up into unclarity for everybody involved. So I think the mission statement to answer that question is like essential. But it starts with understanding what that means to you and your company. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And we have to go fast because we only have 13 minutes left.
That's true.
You know, I think in a lot of ways, the mission statement functions almost like a contract. You know, a contract is really useful in the beginning of a partnership because it makes people decide what it is that they are going to do or what it is that they're not going to do. And it forces us to make those decisions and almost put them down into paper and really live them. So I think you're right that the mission statement is great as a guide. But honestly, I think, and I wrote about this the other day, things like a mission statement can be a double-edged sword, right? You can be too closely tied to your mission statement and not see opportunity,
right?
Or not be able to pivot, right? Or you can be completely disconnected to it and spend your days just sort of like aimlessly wandering around the parking lot, staying busy and probably appearing professional, but not really going after your goals. You know, I think that's connected to what you were saying.
Right. I agree. And then I'm wondering, like, does it ever happen that we're looking at this from a too like small-minded angle, that we're too closely knitted to that mission and we're like, no, we're not going to do any of that because of that. I think realistically speaking, I'd rather see people that just don't have one or are just unclear about their actions. What do you think?
Yeah, you know, that's tricky because it could go bad or well either way, right? I mean, I think that a mission statement should almost be like a living document, you know, kind of like how some people talk about the Constitution here in the US, that this is something that guides us and helps us, but we need to revisit it and make sure that it reflects what it is that we are trying to do in real time.
Yeah.
Some old ideas are quite great. Some of them don't actually fit, you know? And I think that not having a mission statement, boy, you really have to be squared away to be able to pull something meaningful off. Not impossible, but it might be helpful, especially if you have employees, because you have to connect what they're doing with why they're doing it.
Right. And don't forget investors or other stakeholders that are involved to get a good grip on where we're going and why. But I do agree that not having one is possible. But in the end, if we look at it from a very realistic angle, then most entrepreneurs, most organizations don't really have that clue of what's going on. And as you say, that real time, that word, I think that's the most essential here. We can put one on paper and say, well, we have something to work from when we start. And then it just drifts off and we're not really looking into it. Whilst when we keep it close and we see, well, it's steering us in the right direction, but things are changing, let's revisit that. I think it's just that almost a guide when we need it. And I do agree that opportunity should not be missed, but there should be somewhere in that target, let's say, of that range of the mission. But it's a tricky one.
Yeah, it is. It's very tricky because it can be applied, like I said, you know, too tightly or too loosely. And, you know, you said when you need it. And one way to think about a mission statement, I think that's really valuable for some people, is when you start to do something, when you make a decision, or when you have an employee come and say, I think I want to do this way, or I think I want to branch out this way. If there's some way that you can make some sort of trigger or habit to be able to go back to the mission statement and ask the question, how is this related to what we're trying to do?
Yeah.
How is, it may not be intuitively obvious, but if you sit down and think, well, political stability is really important to me. That's my mission, is to have a stable political situation near me. How do I do that? Well, in one way, you have, a capable military, right? You have good defenses. You have a military that can keep your people safe, in other words, right? How do you make that military capable? Well, one way, you make sure they're physically fit, and pull-ups are part of that. And that's where my mind at least goes from. Pull-ups are directly connected to political stability, if that happens to be your mission.
Right. That's a good illustration for sure. I just think that, as you said, like, you would need to almost mirror it, like your new decisions or your new ideas against that. Like, hey, how does that fit? How is that aligned? But when that mission statement is not even up to date, then that's just a dead document that we're not even using, and we shouldn't even be using at that point. But I think that a lot of struggles in organizations when it comes to decision making between co-founders or between team members or within projects or departments stem from that lack of clarity of the objective here. And when ideas are just up in the air and we just go after them without a real mission, then I think we're just, as you said, just spinning our wheels and just kind of like getting along. And yeah, it's professional and it's working, but where is this going really? And I don't think that's a completely different point, a very interesting place to work at some point, because you're just spinning your wheels as an employee too.
Right. Because a mission statement in some ways is almost like an editor, right? You have all these inputs, and if your employees should be encouraged to be thinking of things that you haven't thought of, and to be able to come to you and say, I have a completely different way of approaching this, or I have a completely different opportunity for us. And then you look at the mission statement. Okay, how does what we're doing relate to that mission statement? Separately, I think there are times, and whether it's monthly or quarterly or some kind of trigger, where you look at the mission statement and say, all right, does this actually reflect the things that I've learned, that we've learned, new technology, new competitors, new marketplace, and what we want to do? And I think one idea to keep in mind about your mission statement is that it should have a very heavy keel. It should have a lot of momentum, and it should take a lot of effort and time to turn it, but you should be able to turn it, right?
Yeah.
Like it's I really hate
a North Star.
Sorry?
A North Star.
Yeah. And remember, the North Star moves throughout the sky, right?
True. Yeah.
So, I hate the idea of saying living document because it sounds so cheesy, but I don't know, this might be one of those times where it really fits. Yeah.
And as you say, like, it should be revised, it should be looked at, it should be synced, let's say, with what we're doing every now and then. But I think that goes for so many other things in the company that we talked about in the past, like vision, mission, goals. These things all need to be realigned at points and often. And I do think in the end, it all comes back to, are you intentional about the business operations? Are you intentional about the decision making? Are you really in the known of where this is going? And how does it empower you and your people to lead and come up with new ideas and actually make that happen? And we all know that when we don't know the answer and we're kind of inconfident because we're lacking the answers, that shows in your leadership, that shows in your actions. So in the end, I think the mission statement is the easiest thing that you can start with and even get people on board with too.
Another great thing, I think, is, like you were talking about, is to take that mission statement and really see if your employees understand what you think your mission statement says. Maybe they understand it completely differently, right? And differently does not mean wrong. Maybe they're taking something from it that's actually quite valuable, and having that discussion. It's not an easy discussion. It's not like, hey, what's the temperature outside? But having that discussion can be very fruitful. And another thing about the employees is that a clear mission statement that's connected to their work and connected to your work, in some ways is kind of like a really successful marriage. The more effort you put into it, the more meaningful it becomes, right? And nobody's relationship is the same over time, but there is a thread through that. And, you know, in some ways, to answer Jack's question, or at least to give him an idea directly, how important is it? Yes, it's important, but it can be damaging if it's too important. And it can also be damaging if you're not connected to it at all.
Yeah. I think that is the bottom line, that it should be some sort of guide, but it should not be the end all, because there's so much more than that. But what did I want to add? Well, it gives the company identity and unity to have something to work towards. Identity as in who we are and why we are who we are, but also this is why we are united here together. In the end, the word organization is so like diluted, because organization means we come together to make something happen. And that's kind of like not how it feels for so many. But I think that is the way to unite people and feel excited and thrilling again about what we're doing together. And that comes with, you know, feeling so much more like you are empowered to make it happen. And I come up with new ideas because I know what we're going towards, and I know that there's a missing link here, and I'm able to, you know, address that. It's more exciting to know where we're going together. And again, it should not be, you know, too stiff and too rigid, but it's the guide that we all need.
Yes. And that story about the person sweeping the floor at NASA, I think a lot of people know this story where somebody said, "What are you doing?" And the person responded, "I'm helping put a man on the moon." Right? Yes. Like that's in some ways, who even knows if it's true, but that's in some ways the perfect application of the mission, because that person knows that his job is part of the larger effort, and he's dedicated to that larger effort by doing that piece, the thing that is his job. And he shouldn't have to do his job only a certain way and calculate every single stroke of the broom, whether that gets man on the moon closer. But he can't get too far away from it, because then he's just sweeping the floor. And I think that's what entrepreneurs really want to go for, is that understanding of this is my part that I play on the team that is doing this thing, right? And that's really critical, but it can't be binding.
Nope, that's it, right? And then the big question is for many. I'm not sure if we have comments, by the way, because I don't see them today. But
I don't see them either.
Okay, then how do we make this really practical? Okay, we understand the importance of this. It should not be too rigid. We should be flexible, but it should be there. How do we make sure that we work with this? How do we start to implement a mission statement and apply it in the day-to-day?
That could be another topic, but I think that with things like a mission statement, it's too easy to become too disconnected, and it's too easy to focus on it intensely for a short period of time. So monthly or quarterly meeting with yourself, or meeting with people that work with it, to take a look at it, and some way of ensuring that the people who are working with you have that in their mind. You know, again, it's not posters in the bathroom, but having some kind of communication, whatever is appropriate for the way you work in your team. I think that makes sense. And that's a huge part of the implementation. You have 15 seconds.
Thanks. Nothing to add to that, honestly. I think that's so true. Like, as you say, it can get too important in one moment. Like, oh, let me focus on it now. Let me just put it on paper, and then we forget about it. It should be a recurring thing. It should be something that we keep coming back to. We should work with all the time, and include your people in it too. As you say, like, make sure they are aligned to it, make sure they understand it, and how they can add their value to it. So a live document, check.
Yeah, a live document. And I would say, like, you know, always look at what it says, and does it keep you from having the urgent be your master?
Amen.
Right? Yeah, amen to that. Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. Next week, we will have a pre-recorded broadcast, and then we are off the planet between Christmas and New Year's, and we will see you again. We will see you again at the beginning of the year.
One more remark. If you have any questions for us after this live, we are here in comments. Just send us a message privately or through this comment in the chat. We'll be here to talk about it. So if you need any more insights, then let us know.
Yes. And please don't criticize us for going for 16 minutes and 7 seconds.
Oops. All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you.